It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Man, if Monday doesn't get you, Tuesday will. It's one of them days already, Anthony. It's an Overreaction Tuesday. Lynnell will be with us later on in the show for that. It is a Vibe Check Tuesday. We'll take it to your calls expeditiously at 301-230-0980. That, of course, on the Ace Law listener line. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. But as we're streaming live on YouTube as well, if you're there, you might see my microphone seems a little funny because microphones have what you call pop stoppers on them. And so you can't pop your P's and your S's don't do what they just did. See, if Anthony tries to do that in his microphone right now, the wind will get caught, theoretically, Anthony, if you would like to participate in the exercise. Pop. Yeah, see, it just is a nice smooth pop versus that sound that can come through if you speak. Because for some reason, as the rooster and Doc, but I'm going to blame the rooster, one, because it's more fun, and two, because this is where he sits. As he left the studio, I don't have a pop stopper.
And there's only two people that go in that studio.
Yeah. So, Anthony, I hate to do this, but can you grab one of the other mics in this gigantic radio building's pop stopper, whether it's one of the ones in there where you have three microphones, even though there's never more than one person in that studio, or I think there was like one of the good thick ones in the studio that I prep in, and I'd like to get a pop stopper so that I have a more conducive acoustic setup for the rest of the radio show. Speaking of the rest of the radio show, we'll take a quick detour from the football at 5 o'clock. Josh Robbins has written an excellent piece, which actually I was alerted to on this show yesterday by Dave Johnson, who said, if you haven't read this piece that Josh has written in The Athletic on how the Wizards are approaching this season, like internally with some of the quote-unquote small wins, you got to check it out. And so I took the time to read that story, or the first two of the three parts of that story today. It's literally a three-part series. And as Anthony walks by and just throws up a shrug, can't find a pop stopper anywhere. Fantastic. There's literally multiple ones in the studio he just left. I don't know why he's wandering around. Also, I don't know why he's wandering around with seemingly no urgency, considering now I am doing a radio show literally by myself. If you are watching on YouTube, you see Anthony's empty chair, and you have me in my studio. There's no one else. This is a two-man operation. Right now it is currently a one-man operation as Anthony walks aimlessly around the studio. I literally just can't get out of my chair because then there's silence and awkwardness. And yet, Anthony, just grab the one off that mic. No one uses that mic. Yeah, that one. Why was that so difficult? Yeah, it was right in front of you the whole time.
It doesn't come off.
Yes, it does. Twist it a little bit. Does it really not come off? What? I've never seen that before in my life. What about, is there another one on that? Or there's, here, I literally can't reach it. You want to just come get me the one that's over here? This is the dumbest. We've had a lot of dumb stuff that's happened on this show. This is the dumbest thing that's ever happened on the show. That one looks disgusting. I'll take the one that's not shredded to pieces. Thank you. Yeah, that seems solid enough. Pop your peas. What a ridiculous beginning to the show. The point is, Josh Robbins wrote a really cool and insightful piece, and he's going to join us at 5 o'clock. Other than that, it's a Vibe Check Tuesday here for the first hour on the show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And Anthony, you can go ahead and screen that call real quick, and then we'll get to the calls that are already starting to come in at 301-230-0980, starting in the next segment. But I think, as I have obviously now done, we recorded Take Command this morning, and so I've had a chance to talk through some of the stuff with Logan. And I just go back to the point that I made yesterday to start the show, and this is where I'm at from like a vibe standpoint. Like, I'm just extremely frustrated with the whole approach to this season. And some of it was kind of beyond everyone involved's control. Some of it was hey, Eric Bieniemy got hired late. There was kind of there definitely seemed to be some, I don't want to say like money issues, but like there was a freeze in salaries for coaches and things, and that certainly didn't set up Eric Bieniemy to hire the best staff. And for an offense that doesn't feel like it's well coached position by position and doesn't seem to have a cohesive understanding of how to execute, it certainly does feel like that is a relevant piece of information that Eric Bieniemy might not have been able to hire the staff that he wanted, his guys. But there's also just a reality to like how this offense is designed and who is leveraged and who is being asked to do what. And the answer is Sam Howell, or the reality is Sam Howell is being asked to do a lot. And I think that's a silly plan. I think it is a plan that is not A, designed to help you win football games, and B, not designed to help you develop that quarterback. You need to be able to use the training wheels, hold the back of the bike, get that kid going, and then eventually you can set him free. But even then, like, there's more assistance for Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City than there is for Sam Howell here. Now, is Mahomes better? Of course. Is that relevant? Potentially, in terms of can he handle more? Yeah, of course. But like the way they're asking Sam Howell to play quarterback is how Aaron Rodgers likes to play quarterback. Rodgers is like, don't give me any motion. Just line up. I will see everything because I've seen everything because I've been playing for 100 years, and I'll deal. And he can play that way. It's him. It's Brady. That's about it. Manning could do that, but even Peyton liked to play the chess game and get you into the right play. Rodgers was just like, what's the play? Okay. I have an encyclopedic knowledge of all defenses. I have a supercomputer brain that can figure out based off down distance, time, score, situation, what the defensive coordinator is going to call. I know his calls better than he does. And he was right all the time, so he knew where to go with the ball. Sam Howell can't do that. You got to give him information. You have to use formations. You have to, not ask him to do all that reading of defenses so often. If it's 3rd and 7, okay. Yep, we're in an obvious passing situation. We're gonna have to make a play here. We're gonna have to ball. And in other situations, we might roll out, we might run, we might do all these other things to make things easier, and they just don't. And I think that's where I land right now, and like my biggest frustration right now. My other biggest frustration, if I'm being honest, here's another one we can kick around, is like I know that I talked about how difficult it would be to fire Jack Del Rio earlier in the season. It's very clear in hindsight that that was an enormous mistake. Now, I also was someone who advocated for changing coordinators in the offseason. And frankly, during last season, they should have moved on from Del Rio after the horrendous start. He turned it around last year, and I understand why Ron thought he might again, but he didn't. And it just seems like so many of the things that they're doing now, basic stuff, like chipping backs on wheel routes out of the backfield instead of asking Jamin Davis to just run with Saquon Barkley out in space, were available to them earlier in the year. And I don't know why they didn't do it. So frustrated at missed opportunities that seem like fairly low-hanging fruit by football standards. But where are you at? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We got a couple of calls on hold. We'll get right to them, and we got lines open, so we hope that you'll fill them next on the Ace Law listener line here on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Taking your calls on the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. It is a Vibe Check Tuesday. So my question for you today is, has your opinion of Sam Howell changed after 3 straight not very good games, including probably the worst game of his career Sunday against the Los Angeles Rams? 301-230-0980. Let's get things started with Robert. Robert, thanks for holding through the break. You, sir, are getting us started on a Vibe Check Tuesday.
Okay, thanks for picking me up there. Last year, when Howell was on the bench, I was screaming for him to get in the game. They finally put him in the game towards the end of the season there, which I didn't like at all. But, okay, so this year we get a new coordinator, offensive coordinator, and Sam Howell gets a fresh start. You know, we've seen him play through, 10? I don't know how many games. It's enough, you know. Either it's a bad match with him and the offensive coordinator, or it's just Sam Howell not getting it. But, you know, he's taking sacks, he's throwing interceptions. You know, he's just, you know, what is it? He's not seeing the field, he's not seeing the plays. What is it? I don't know what it is.
I mean, it's a lot of different
Sit him
things.
down.
It's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's so much here. I mean, it is truly a systemic level problem. One thing on the sacks, Sam has curbed the sacks at a remarkable rate. I mean, he went from like an 11.6, I think it was, in games 1 through 8. He's like 7.6% sacks the last couple of weeks. And like the only one he takes on Sunday, sack-wise, now there's some pressures and there's some other things that are issues here. These are why these problems are complex, and trying to distill them down into like a single thought with a single piece of blame is a pointless exercise. And anyone who tries to do it, you should immediately not listen to. But like, Sam took 1 sack on Sunday. That was a blown block by Antonio Gibson. AG read the right guy, went to go pick him up. He just missed. Makes a physical error. Bad job. Sam gets crushed. Offensive line actually did a pretty good job on Sunday. But Sam often vacated clean pockets or couldn't see over a pocket. It was a little muddy, and he just misses stuff. So part of it is he doesn't see the field. Is that because he doesn't know where to look? He doesn't understand it? Is that on him? Is that on the coaches? Sometimes it is receivers making things muddy because their spacing's terrible. They don't run the routes correctly. Like, this is a year where there's been a little bit of everything. My biggest picture stuff, though, my order of operations starts with it's a bad plan. It is a bad idea to have this simplistic of an offense for this quarterback with this offensive line and expect to win football games and or to expect Sam to grow. There's just no margin for error in the way that Jalen Hurts had the league's best offensive line in Philadelphia. Or, God, Logan had another really good example today when we were recording. I mean, there's so many around the league. I mean, Sean Payton has put Russell Wilson back in a box, and that has been successful, right? They figured out what the proper temperature is to let Russ cook. Kevin O'Connell with Kirk Cousins has said, like, hey, Kirk is really good at X, Y, and Z, so we were going to make sure we emphasize X, Y, and Z, and he's really bad at A, B, and C, so let's make sure that we never have him trying to do A, B, and C, and Kirk has been fantastic until, obviously, the injury earlier this year. You see an offense designed for Aaron Rodgers in New York, and they don't know how to pivot, and every other quarterback that plays in it is lost. It's a bad job. That is closer to you know, on a big picture level, to what is happening here. And so what happened was, earlier in the year, there was a number of concepts that Sam liked that they ran, and they were good, but they didn't evolve. And whether that's on Eric to push Sam, on Sam to get better at a rate that he's either hasn't or is not capable of, and that should tell us something. Like, it's too hard to tell definitively, but if you're having this offensive coordinator who is the past happiest guy in the league and a young quarterback, I have said from go, even when they were playing well, that I don't think this is sustainable. And, well, that has borne out to be true. Let's go to Glenn. Glenn, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, how you doing? I just want to vent a little bit.
Right ahead.
I'm 57 years old. I've been a fan since I was 7, 8 years old, 50 years. And this is the first time in my life I've actually been rooting against Washington so that we can get a better pick in the draft. And I'm hoping whoever comes in here doesn't screw that up. But, earlier in the year I was more optimistic, but now I'm just like, forget it. We're done.
Well, I think
I try to look for improvement, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Glenn, let me run this idea by you because I don't know how deeply you've thought about this, but I actually think some of what you're experiencing, doing this for the first time in your life, is actually hopeful. And I know that sounds crazy and like overly optimistic, but with Dan Snyder gone, I actually think that there is hope for a reset and to really get this right in a way that there just hasn't been. You said you've been a fan for 50 years, for the last 25. Because you knew as long as Dan was here, he was going to be the guy that screwed up the next guy. And now there's like real hope that they could turn things around and that you could end this cycle of mediocrity because they're not going to take shortcuts. And Josh Harris is someone that the best people are going to want to work for. And to me, obviously like the first, if you're 57, 25 years ago, you're what? God, now I'm trying to do math. You're in your late 20s or in your 20s, right, and you're not thinking about it as deeply, and certainly you're not in your childhood. But as you've thought about what it really means to be a fan of Washington and what the future holds, I actually think some of the let's just give up and start this over could actually be a sign of long-term hope in a way that your body's never and your mind's never let you feel before because you knew Dan was going to mess it up.
Yeah, what the thing is, we've been through this rebuild so many times through so many coaches. It's disheartening. It's hard to every year you get excited to get a year, and then they start out and it's like, oh no, it's the same. It hasn't changed. And I understand what you're saying, that a reset is hopefully this is a good thing this coming off season and to the coming that new season. But
for sure.
But
Glenn,
anyway,
I'm going to let you run because we got a bunch of other calls, but thank you for your call. And, hopefully we get you to keep listening throughout these next couple of weeks and on through the reset, because I do think this is an exciting time. I know Grant's been on this as this is the most exciting time to be a Commanders fan in a long time. And I would say this is the most exciting time you may have been able to convince yourself when Gruden got here that Robert, he was going to fix Robert and everything was going to be fine. You were still relatively close to that 2012 season. And you're like, man, this is going to be great. Jay's going to come in. He's this young, exciting offensive mind. Obviously we know what his brother was able to do, but he was killing it in Cincinnati. He's going to fix Robert. They got this wonder kid McVay with him. This is going to be awesome. And then Robert was nowhere close to being what he was in 2012, and Kirk wasn't quite there yet. And then you go through, and basically from really 2016 on, it's been the land of mediocrity or worse. But I don't think there was ever any real hope at any point in the Rivera era. Maybe after 2020, but you won the division, but it was at 7-9. Ron's never been over 500. So I think that there's real, the idea that there's some real hope is something that is just now entering the equation. And I think the other factor here is that whoever is next is going to have total freedom to remake everything. It's in many ways what the Wizards are doing, except for I think it's a lot easier to do in the NFL because in the NBA, if you don't have one of the 7 guys on the planet that matters, if you don't have Jokic, Giannis, LeBron, Steph, Tatum, Luka, maybe there's 1 or 2 more. You don't have a shot unless you're the Heat and you have Heat culture. Heat culture is the 7th guy. Like, you just don't have a shot. And in the NFL, we've seen wacky stuff happen. You can build an elite defense and take it all the way to a championship. You can build a solid roster with a good quarterback and have that elevate you to a Super Bowl appearance. You can have, Joe Flacco. I mean, there were literally Flacco versus Kaepernick a couple of years ago. Like, those two guys at the time were like pretty good, but not great quarterbacks. There's the whole, is Joe Flacco elite thing. He sure as hell was elite for that stretch. And that was always my argument with Cousins. Cousins was never going to be one of the top 5 guys in the league, but he could be a borderline top 10 who played at a top 5 level and if he did it at the right time of the year, you could win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. Obviously, that didn't guarantee anything. I wouldn't predict at this point in his career, 34 coming off Achilles, that he will, but he wasn't going to necessarily be the reason that you couldn't win one. But clearly the best path is find the guy. Find Patrick Mahomes. Find Joe Burrow, Brady, etc. So if you can get that, you should. And that's the question that the Commanders have to ask. Is Jaden Daniels, if they lose enough, is Drake May, is it worth trading up for Caleb Williams because it's going to cost you a king's ransom that I don't know Chicago is going to be willing to even accept, because if they also think Caleb Williams is the guy, there's no amount of picks that they should take for that guy. And so, and maybe Bo Nix or Penix is the guy that Washington's like, yo, that actually, we think this guy sneakily is better than all the rest. And so we're going to trade back in this draft and get a stud left tackle and a stud this and a stud that, and we're going to spend all this free agent money. Like, maybe that's the play. Or maybe they do all that stuff around Howell. There's multiple ways to do this. But I think unlike in years past where Jay was stuck with Robert, Ron was basically stuck with Haskins, and there wasn't great free agent money, and this was a place that nobody really wanted to go because the facilities are terrible and the owners stunk. And by the way, everyone kind of knew there was some slimy stuff coming or that happened around here, even if we didn't know the extent and we didn't know it would wind up in congressional investigations. Everyone knew all of that. The luster had been off this place. It's back on now. And that's in large part thanks to you guys, to everyone listening who made the sale into what it was with, the party that we put on and the sellouts earlier in the season. Like, Washington's ready to be back. And I think people around the league know it, and that's going to matter. The question is, what do they do at quarterback? And that's something that we're still evaluating and will be through free agency and ultimately the draft. 301-230-0980. We got Clyde, we got Charles, we got Saeed, we got a whole bunch of people on hold right now. We will get to all of y'all, and there's a couple of open lines open as well next here on the Vibe Check Tuesday on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Let's keep going on a Vibe Check Tuesday. Has your opinion changed on Sam Howell? 301-230-0980. We also checking the YouTube chat on the YouTube stream, which makes sense. It would be weird if we were checking the YouTube chat on, like, I don't know, Instagram. But James Taylor checking in says, what years under Dan Snyder did Washington actually go through a true rebuild the right way? This is actually the first one to me, and I think that's correct. That's what happens when you have an impatient owner who hires unqualified people at basically every turn. I mean, there was very few times during the Dan Snyder era that head coach, GM, or top football executive was like a person who should be that thing. Whether it's Bruce Allen's entire tenure, where he had no business being a general manager over football operations, whether it's Vinny Serrato, whether it's, all these other guys that were basically one and done. I mean, Bruce was at least qualified on paper when he took over, but it very quickly, I think everyone was like, no. But you see that a lot of these other folks never got another job again, or whether it's Jim Zorn as head coach on down the list, Washington's a place where a lot of careers went to die, some of them just after they had gotten started. Let's go back to the phones, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Kai. Kai, thanks for holding through the break. You're on the Team 980.
Thanks for taking my call, Craig.
You got it.
I just wanted to say I'm not comparing Sam Howell to Patrick Mahomes or anything. Sam Howell was the fifth rounder. Patrick Mahomes was the first rounder. But what I'm saying is that I believe that they gave Sam Howell like the Patrick Mahomes treatment because he set for a whole year. Patrick Mahomes set for a whole year. They probably played like 1 or 2 games their first year. So my thing is, why is Sam Howell, why can't he read defenses if you set the whole year? So I'm blaming that on Sam Howell. What was he doing the whole year that he wasn't playing? And
he was learning a different system.
I believe no, but I'm not the system. I'm talking about defenses. How to read defenses. That's what I'm saying.
You read the defense based off the system. The system, the plays are designed with reads in them, and you read them based off of what you are supposed to be looking at based off of the system. The quarterback coach is teaching your eyes where to go differently based off of the system. Yes, of course he took in some of that stuff, but he had such limited pass reps. Like, I'm sure Sam could get up there and read a defense on a projector. It's different to do it once you get on the field. And again, it's different when you haven't spent whatever reps you do get and their film study you do in a different system. But yes, he's not as good as Mahomes either, which is a relevant piece of information.
He's not, but I'm not saying he's on Mahomes. I'm just saying 18 interceptions, you're not the guy if you're throwing 18 interceptions.
You know who holds the rookie record for interceptions in a season?
So you're going to blame the hit. Hold on, you're going to blame the 18 interceptions on the system?
No, not all of them. But he throw a couple things. First of all, hold on, Kai, answer my question. Do you know who holds the rookie record for most interceptions as a rookie?
And I know, and you're trying to compare him to that guy.
No, I'm just saying your point's irrelevant.
He's not Peyton Manning.
Yeah, no kidding. But Peyton Manning's the guy who threw the most picks as a rookie. So to say 18 interceptions, not the guy, it's Peyton Manning turned out to be all right despite that.
Did he or did he not show flashes that, Peyton Manning can be the guy? Sam Howell has not shown any flashes since maybe week 2 that he's the guy.
He's thrown for 300 yards 4 times since then.
Garbage yards. We wasn't in the game.
Not all of them.
They were in prevent defense.
Not all of them. Those yards he got against Philadelphia when they lost by a touchdown were pretty important.
Not that one. No, you're right. Not that one. But all I'm saying is if we have the 4th pick, I believe that we should draft a quarterback. And then my last point is that I believe we should keep Eric Bieniemy because we've been burned too many times with our offensive coordinators going somewhere else and flourishing. If you look around, we have 4 offensive coordinators that was here, or
no, you have 2 offensive coordinators. Actually 3
coaches that were here. I would say 4 or 5 coaches that were here, and now they're flourishing and at their own, running their system.
Yes, and only one of them you had a chance to, or 2 of them. All right, thanks, Kai. you're making a lot of points that don't actually add up. And I'm sorry, it's the case. I'm not trying to be rude, but like you can't throw out a data point and say like this is the reason when there's a lot of historical precedent that suggests that that is not actually an indicator. There are some numbers that scare me about Sam Howell, some of his sack stuff, whatever, the interception rates. Like there are some things, but also just pure counting stats. Yeah, he leads the league in interceptions. He also leads the league in pass attempts. That's my whole point and why you shouldn't want to keep Eric Bieniemy. Because Eric Bieniemy took a young quarterback and was like, I know what to do. Have him throw the ball more than everyone else in the league. That's nuts. That is not smart. Eric Bieniemy has forgotten more football than I will ever know, but it doesn't take a genius to figure that big picture thing out. And the idea that, like, all those coaches that you're talking about, with the exception of one, which is O'Connell, McDaniels, LaFleur, Shanahan, McVay, they all were on the same staff, and there was only two of them you could have theoretically hired at the time. LaFleur and McDaniels were still so young in their careers, they were years away from being head coaches. Years. McVay would have involved firing Jay Gruden, which would not have been a thing because you would have fired Sean's best friend to hire him. He wasn't going to go for that. That was not an option. And you were firing Kyle Shanahan's dad. And by the way, he hated the owner by the time he left. Now, could you have hired O'Connell instead of Rivera? Yes. It would have probably been too early. I think Kevin benefited greatly from going to LA. Ron should have kept Kevin as the offensive coordinator. That is one of the mistakes, many mistakes, that Ron Rivera made as head coach here in Washington. However, saying we've let other coaches out of the building before and thus we can't do it again with Bieniemy when he so clearly is not the right guy to work with a young quarterback is asinine. That does not mean if I was the LA Chargers and I hired a defensive head coach that I would be like, no, you cannot go hire Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator to work with Justin Herbert. But you are either dealing with Sam Howell again next year or someone younger and more inexperienced. Why would you want a guy who just ran this season this way to work with that quarterback? I would not. I want someone who is more of an incubator. I want someone who understands you can't put Sam Howell in the Patrick Mahomes offense. And in fact, it's not even that. It's worse. They protect Mahomes, deleverage him more in Kansas City than they do with Sam Howell here. The motions, all that stuff that makes Mahomes' life a lot easier, and then all he has to do is deal. It's different, and he's got better players around him and guys that understand certain things. Now, is Mahomes the best quarterback in the league? Yeah. Does Mahomes elevate that offense? Tremendously. Would I take Mahomes on literally every other team over every other quarterback in every other system? Yes. He's that good. But there are just certain things that I look at what they've done with Bieniemy here and Sam here, and I go, you can't possibly be serious with that decision. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app. Our phone lines are full, which means we're going to have to go quickly through the rest of the calls next here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. The Ace Law listener line is pretty jammed up at the moment. 301-230-0980. I'm going to try to get to as many calls in the next 10 minutes as I can before we are joined by Josh Robbins at the top of the hour. Of course, the Ace Law listener line is presented by Ace Law. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. You call 8888 Ace Law. All right, if I cue you up, let's get your point in and keep it moving. No disrespect. I'd love to talk to everybody more, but I want to try to be as fair to everybody as possible and get through as many as we can. So, Clyde, get us started. Clyde, thanks for calling and waiting. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah. Thanks for taking my call, and I enjoyed everything you've said, and you are right. If you want to blame somebody, blame Ron Rivera, because he was right about only one thing, building the culture, but he didn't know how to build a winning culture, a winning spirit. I remember the first game, John Allen, I think, said when they were behind, and he said, all we need is one more play, and they came back and won that game. And all I know is I never heard that again the whole season. So he wasn't the man to build a spirit there. And I don't think it's Sam's fault at all.
All right, Clyde, thanks for the call. Let's go to Saeed. Saeed, thanks for calling. You, sir, are back on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks. We don't have time for me to talk about fantasy football, so I'll do that next
Not
time.
today, unfortunately, but the day will come.
Yeah. But I would say this: Sam Howell, my opinion hasn't changed. He's more than what we expected, but he's still less than what we needed. I really don't think I've seen too much. I don't know. We don't like using this word development on the team. Sam Howell was patting the ball in North Carolina. Sam Howell was throwing the ball into linemen in North Carolina when they batted it down. Sam Howell was having trouble understanding what to do within the pocket and wanted to leave the pocket all the time in North Carolina. Sam Howell took sacks in North Carolina. Nobody watched that tape after they drafted him and worked on any of those things and then threw him out there. And so for me, we don't have any development. We're not developing the players. We're not developing coaches. We're not developing executives. We're not developing anyone. And by the way, for the caller who mentioned the INTs, I'm glad you said something. When you throw the ball a bajillion times, yeah, your probability of throwing picks is going to come up. That's kind of how this works.
Right.
Anyway,
the percentage times the total equals a higher number when the total is a higher number. Thanks for the call. I think that, like, to me, the larger point is not that they're not developing, although that is something that is a worry. I also look at how that works league-wide, and quarterbacks tend to just kind of continue on the trajectory that they're on. If they're sack-prone, they will always stay some level of sack-prone. It's how good do you get at the things that you're good at, and that's where Sam hasn't really grown, it feels like, very much this season. But I think also it's an OC and a head coach and an offensive staff and a team, a GM, to not let Martin Mayhew off the hook. Like, they looked at that quarterback and said, we can use that here with these people and this system. And they didn't go, we need to upgrade the offensive line if this is who we're going to play at quarterback. We need to, and not, like, again, the offensive line's not terrible. But not terrible isn't good enough against in front of Sam Howell. You need really good. You also need to probably run the football more. I'd say you probably need to run him more. Like, there's a lot of choices they made that are simple A-B switches that if you know Sam is who he is, which is their job, you would never do that if you were either trying to win football games or allow him the time to develop. Let's go to Brian. Brian, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, Chris? How's it going?
I'm good, man. I'm good. What you got for us?
So early in the season, there was a point, I would say the first half, where Sam had did enough for me to say, okay, he can be our starter for 2024. And when the offseason comes, let's focus on everything else. However, my opinion changed on him when it became clear, and as it's becoming clear that we're going to have a top 5 pick. And I look at the reality, Craig, which is this: for all intents and purposes, in the 24 offseason, Josh Harris will be a new owner. He's going to have a new GM who's going to have a new head coach who's going to have a new offensive coordinator. I think it just makes sense to think that group is going to want to sit down and bring their guy in and not have to hitch their wagon to Sam Howell, who he's been okay, but he hasn't done enough for a whole new regime to go all in on him. So thanks for taking my call. Listen to your thoughts.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for calling in. I think that is it's possibly correct, but I think the new regime's in a good spot. Like, they have all the tape on Howell. There will be someone on this staff and some people in the building who are retained. You're not going to literally replace 100%. And even if it's like a low-level offensive staffer, some quality control coach type of person, you can ask that guy, like, hey, what's Sam's work habits like? How does he treat people in the building? Like, there's lots of public comments of players like Andrew Wiley, who has been around Patrick Mahomes. You say what you want about Wiley as a pass blocker, but I trust that guy's judgment on dudes in NFL locker rooms. And Andrew Wiley loves Sam Howell. And so I think that from like the data that you're taking in, you look at, and this is what they should do every single season, but especially it becomes important this season given the draft pick and given the nature of where they are in their franchise's trajectory. If they determine that Sam is better and what they've seen from Sam is better than what they think they would see from Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, on down the list, then you go forward with Sam. You don't worry about whose guy it is. He becomes your guy. Like, hey, we're really excited about what Sam can do, and we think if we surround him in a system and an environment, player, personnel, scheme-wise, that's different than what they did last year, the record ain't going to be the same. And I think that's not unreasonable based off some of the positive things we have seen. But I also won't be mad if they're like, we think this Jaden Daniels kid is going to be awesome. We're drafting him. Fine. That's why they're paid the big bucks. I get paid what I get paid because I get to be like, yeah, you should evaluate everybody and see who's better. Really tough job over here sometimes. Let's keep going with the calls. Let's go to JT. JT, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, fellas? Glad you took the call. But very similar to everything that you just said. Sam, I think Sam has shown us a lot of great things beginning of the year. I do take into account, and I know most of us have, that a lot of those big games were against some lesser defenses, and as we face some of our tougher defenses, the outcome, hasn't always been the same. And that's not to say something wrong with Sam. That's most quarterbacks. However, being that we'll have a top 5 pick, you gotta. I mean, and the GM knows what they have to do, but they gotta take into account the type of talent that's going to be available in this year's draft at the quarterback position. And with that being said, in my personal opinion, if you feel one of those other guys, probably who will be available, Daniels or May, you gotta shoot your shot. I think Sam.
For sure.
I think Sam is probably, an average starter to great backup at best. What I've seen so far, the problem, I think you guys have just stated this, is that the offense that we ran this year with EB just really has not done the best job possible in insulating Sam with, not running the ball and just the offense that we have. And so we really did not get to really get a good look at Sam and who he is or who he can be. So with that being said, with that indecision, you can't go into another season with indecision. You just got to shoot your shot. And I think you got to select and go get a quarterback.
All right. Thanks for the call, JT. I mean, I think JT said something there and like kind of caught himself that is a good catch and is correct. We've seen who Sam is. What we haven't seen is what he could be. And that's ultimately the question that we're trying to ask here is like, Sam Howell has shown he can be a guy who throws it for 300, almost 400 yards in a game. That's not easy to do in the NFL. Sam has also shown he's a guy who can go 11 for 26 for 102 yards and a touchdown and an interception against a Rams defense that's solid but not amazing. But I think the question you have to ask is, okay, yes, there's talent at the quarterback position in this draft. And do you risk? Here's the risk. You don't draft a quarterback. Sam is good enough to get you back in the 8-8 range. Now, obviously 8-9, 9-8, whatever. Maybe on a good year, 10-7. but not actually good enough to win a Super Bowl, and now you're back in the wheel of mediocrity and you missed your chance. That's what would terrify me if I was a GM. But if I thought Sam was good enough to not be stuck there, where I'm like, this is a 10-win-a-year quarterback. We got the next Dak Prescott, which I know, Commanders fans are going to be too excited about Dak Prescott because he hasn't won that many playoff games, but, Dak's very good. If we got the next, not the next Brady, but the next Dak, the next Kirk, the next solidly top 10 quarterback to come out of the 4th round or later, that if you surround with a great O-line, good to great skill position players, and you stack up the other side of the ball, you can be one of the favorites in the NFC year in, year out. I think it's also tempting to say, hey, everyone else is going to get distracted by the quarterbacks. We're going to get a number 1 pick caliber left tackle at 4 in Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. If you think he's that good, that becomes really tempting. And this is the roller coaster we're going to ride together as we get more and more input on all the draft stuff over the next 4 months, 5 months, until the end of April and the NFL draft finally comes. That is Vibe Check Tuesday. Thanks to everyone. We try to get to as many calls as we could. But the good news is we are going to take more calls later on in the show. So we will circle back to your calls in the 6 o'clock hour. Also still to come, Josh Robbins is next from The Athletic on some Wizards things. Then Lynnell and I, really good conversation coming on Howell and Bieniemy and a lot of this similar stuff in Overreaction Tuesday at 5:30. Kevin Sheehan's going to join us at 6. What about the alternate version of this season where Jacoby Brissett starts a bunch of games? What would that have looked like? We'll explore with Sheehan at 6 o'clock, and then we'll get back to your calls after that on the Ace Law listener line. That was Vibe Check Tuesday, hour 2 of the Hoffman Show. Next, here on the Team 980. Hour 2 of the Hoffman Show on the Team at 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We will get back to the Commanders coming up in just a few minutes. Lynnell for Overreaction Tuesday. Right now, though, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Well, it may not be the top story in terms of the most important thing. This is one of the more important stories I've read in DC sports in terms of on the field, on the court, in a hot second. Inside the Wizards Rebuild. It's a 3-part series from The Athletic, co-authored by David Aldridge and our guest, Josh Robbins. Josh, first of all, happy holidays. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for that nice walk-up music.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got to get
great.
the vibe right. So you...
This is why you guys are the best.
We're trying our little engine that can over here. So you and David embarked on something that I think is really important if you're a Wizards fan and you are trying to understand, like, where is this thing headed? You know, they talk about small wins. What are they? And you go on in the series, for instance, in part 2 to talk about some of the amenities that the players have had in terms of chefs and different things in the practice facility that are going to enhance, and as Michael Winger, I think brilliantly says, reduce friction on the way to success, even if they won't directly cause it. But in terms of that first part of the series that you focused in on, the small wins, why is that so important? And also, I think you did a really good job in the piece of kind of caveating, like, hey, this does not mean they're going to win basketball games, at least yet. Do you think that this is actually the right approach?
This element of the rebuild is the right approach. You know, I've covered one of these rebuilds before, and the word we used in one of our pieces is corrosive. Losing is corrosive, and they're losing a lot. There's no question. And one of the ways to counterbalance that is to emphasize individual improvement, preferably in areas that would benefit the team. So if I'm Daniel Gafford and I'm trying to get 21% of all defensive rebounds, that would benefit the team. And when the team is losing so many games, there has to be other things for the players, the coaches, the staff members to latch onto and to shoot for. And therefore, this is important. And it's also important that players improve and that the Wizards start to build a reputation in the league for players to be able to point to that franchise and say, that's a place where guys get better.
Do you think that is happening? And I know we're very early in this. We're less than half a season. We're like a quarter of one season into what will probably be a multi-year thing. But as someone who, unlike most of us, who is like, I don't know if I have to watch the Wizards game tonight. You do. You're a beat reporter. That is your job. Are you starting to see some of those incremental improvements week over week, game over game?
Yes, and in some cases, they're not only incremental improvements. I would think that Bilal is improving quite a bit. Denny Avdia has improved more than quite a bit. Daniel Gafford is showing signs of improvement. I think some guys, Kyle Kuzma for one, Tyus Jones, difficult to pinpoint specific improvements, partly because they are 28 and 27 years old. That it's very difficult to pinpoint that kind of growth. So for the younger guys, I think it's happening. I think for the older guys, it's much more difficult to identify.
Josh Robbins, The Athletic Wizards beat reporters with us here on the Hoffman Show. I cannot recommend this series enough. Kind of inside the Wizards rebuild. You mentioned the Gafford stat. That's one you got your hands on. 21% of total rebounds available. They want him to get. How closely guarded is this information, and how hard has it been to get the actual numbers, or even an idea of what numbers that Michael Winger and Will Dawkins are looking for?
Some of it is difficult. Some of it is. Some of the generalities are relatively simple. It varies. Sometimes it varies from player to player. With regard to Bilal, who is so young and for whom fans' hopes are so high, and rightly so, I think that they are. I think it's safe to say that the team is more reluctant to share specific goals. So, in my opinion, if he doesn't meet those goals, that he doesn't get roasted, right? If that makes sense. They need to take a very long-term, patient approach to his development, and he's certainly exceeding, I think, expectations. But if I were in the Wizards' shoes, I'd be very reluctant to heap any pressure on him. So I think withholding specific numbers, in his case, is probably a smart strategy. Now, I would prefer to have the numbers, and I would prefer to publish those numbers.
Right.
We didn't get them. And so some are easier, some are more difficult to get. For example, even with regard to Anthony Gill, who's probably the most open player on the team in many respects, he wouldn't share his own numbers, even though there's probably very little amount of clamor within Wizards Nation, if you can call it that, for his specific goals. So I would say it varies from player to player.
One guy you did get, and I thought this was super interesting, was Corey Kispert, who's also extremely open. He's like, this is what it is, and this is what we're doing. That is the Corey Kispert way, and I both respect the hell out of it and love it as a journalist. But what was, to give folks in the audience an example here, what was Corey's number, and how has he really owned that this season?
Well, I'm the co-author of that piece, and I can't exactly remember, but I can generalize. They are looking for him, and really everybody on the roster, to be honing in on their specific shot profiles, to try to hone in on doing what they do best and taking the shots that make the most sense for the team. In Corey's case, it would be three-pointers, preferably below the break, and shots at the rim. I think that's safe to say for pretty much every player except Gafford.
Right.
Yeah,
he's just the shots below the rim.
Yes, and I don't mean that as a slight to Daniel. What I'm trying to say is that the whole league shooting a mid-range shot outside of the paint is anathema. That's the word we use. So in Corey's case in particular, they want him honing in on his threes, and he's an elite three-point shooter, and attacking the rim, and he's a good finisher at the rim. So he's taken very, very few mid-range shots, and some of those are what I would imagine NBA players call grenades, where you get the ball late in the shot clock and you just absolutely have to put up a shot. So he has made significant progress in eliminating those non-paint two-point attempts.
Yeah, no, and as you guys wrote in the piece, it was shots within 4 feet, three-pointers, and there was a great quote from him, like, I don't know whether it was you or David who had the exchange with him through 12 games of the season, but you started to ask him about it, and you were like, how many shots? And he goes, 100%. And at that point, he had not taken a single one, as you mentioned, some grenades. Since then, Josh Robbins is with us here on the Hoffman Show. So the last guy I want to ask you about real quick, though, Josh, is going to just ruin the good vibes, because if there is one big disappointment this year for Washington, it is undoubtedly been Jordan Poole. There was a thought that he would grow and that he would be doing, his numbers would get better based off of what they had been. They were kind of what they had been for a while and have now dipped below what he was doing in Golden State, despite being a featured guy here and a bench guy there. In the conversations you've had around this piece and also just generally, like, what are they trying to get out of Jordan Poole, and why do the folks around the organization, and why do you think that hasn't happened yet?
Well, they need him to be a primary scorer, and they need him to have a pretty high volume of shots, preferably shots that make sense. You're correct. He's been very inefficient. Not actually lately, he's shown signs of real life offensively against Indiana in their win, and last night, for instance.
Yeah.
So it's taken him time to adjust to a bigger role, and also to being the person other teams are undoubtedly focusing on, Jordan and Kuz. He's also taken time to, I think, adjust to new teammates and teammates adjust to him. And when I say that, I mean on the court. There's an element, as good as NBA players are, it takes time for them to learn each other's games. This is not baseball. This is not even football, right? This is a more free-flowing, more creative game that requires more improvisation. So his game ought to be heavy on improvisation. And I think that's part of the reason why he has struggled. You're right. He hasn't played up to the world's expectations for him. Team officials say he's going to need time to really get comfortable, maybe even the midseason. He said not too long ago it could take a full season, which, of course, I think Wizards fans would find ridiculous. They would say that. For some reason, Jordan Poole gets a heck of a lot less leeway than almost any other NBA player I've ever covered. It's a very interesting phenomenon for which I don't quite have the explanation.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point, and I think there's probably a lot of potential explanations, but we could probably spend another hour trying to suss them all out. So instead, we'll just leave that thought for pondering amongst ourselves and amongst the audience. Josh, the piece is so good. I got part 3 teed up to read tonight after the show. Thanks as always for coming on the show, and great work on this.
Hey, thank you for having me. Merry Christmas to everybody out there and to you.
Thank you very much, and same right back at you. That is Josh Robbins, everybody, from The Athletic with us here on The Hoffman Show. When we get back, Lynnell and I go back and forth on the old quarterback offensive coordinator situation in Washington, the offensive environment under the microscope. It's Overreaction Tuesday. Next. It is Overreaction Tuesday time. Lynnell is with us, and the takes were spicy on Twitter over the weekend. I don't know how they are 48 hours later. I do know the Commanders have lost 5 straight games. They're 4-10. It's a bad football team. Everyone's gruff and angry. And oh, by the way, the quarterback got benched. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the defense? You want to start with the quarterback? Where do you want to go?
I want to start with you and your sassy Twitter spat that you were in on Sunday. Me and Denton were having a really good time reading your tweets on air. You and Brendan Darr had a nice back and forth about the quarterback and the offense, and I thought it was interesting. You both make very good points. I already know where you stand on the topic, so I already kind of knew where you were coming from with all of it. I'll say this. Obviously, benching Sam was never a good option, because if you were going to do that, you probably should have done it a long time ago. But I will say this, for the final 3 games of the season, if you're going to try and get the best look at everyone in your offense, would you think that Jacoby would give you a better chance to do so? And when I say everyone in your offense, I mean personnel and then the coaching staff in terms of Eric Bieniemy calling certain things and being able to get to certain things.
Nope. Because none of it matters. Like, I think if you want to defend Bieniemy and be like, see, Jacoby can do it, that's not actually a defense of Bieniemy. It's telling me that Eric is stubborn and has his system, and he was not willing to fit it to a young quarterback who does not have the same experiences as Jacoby Brissett, who does not have the same experiences as Patrick Mahomes. And the job was not offensive coordinator generic. It's offensive coordinator for the Commanders, and the offensive coordinator for the Commanders in 2023. And he has, as part of many other failures, been unable to create an offense that consistently week in and week out either wins football games, develops the quarterback, or both. And that was where I started the show yesterday. It was just like, the idea that this is somehow good for development and it'll all be worth it, like, is nonsense. This is just not how you do it. This is not how you develop a quarterback in the NFL. This is how, and I've used this analogy now for a couple of days, like, when you teach a kid to ride a bike, you give him training wheels and then you hold the back of the seat, and you don't just be like, hey, buddy, get on your bike and go fall over. Because all that happens, like, all that happens is the kid falls over time and time again. They don't actually learn anything. They just fall a lot. You have to get the steps in the process. And they just threw Sam to the wolves this year. And, maybe one of the worst thing that happens was it kind of worked early, but it didn't leave a lot of room to evolve. And I just think there's a lot of things they could have done to make this season more fruitful, either in wins or better for Sam as it went, or both. And they failed in that. And so, like, what am I really evaluating on the offensive side over these last couple of weeks? I've already learned that about EB. None of the offensive linemen I have that many questions about. That doesn't mean all the answers are good, but I don't have that many questions. And on the receiver position, I would like to see Jahan have a stronger finish to the season. But at the same time, like, I don't think Jahan stinks. I think that this offense is not conducive to wide receiver success the way it's currently being run. So there's a lot of issues very clearly, and not all of them are direct reflections of Bieniemy, to be very clear. But I actually don't have that many questions, and getting Sam the experience, hopefully in a more conducive environment to success over these final 3 games, is a bigger priority for me.
Yeah, I think if I had to make a decision, or the team had to make a decision right now as to whether or not you want to move forward with him, he's under contract next year. So I think he's going to be on the roster one way or another. But Sunday was disappointing for me, because early and often, like, you're seeing him. First of all, I disagree with you saying, like, the answers are there. Sam's just not getting to them. I feel like he's scheming people open, and he's missing chunk plays week in and week out. And, like, those are the difference between being a top 20 offense and maybe a top half of the league offense. You hit on some of these deep shots that are there every week, and maybe you have better results. I just don't. I feel like Sam's broken at this point. And I hate that we're here, and I hate seeing this happen to young quarterbacks. And I think everyone involved had played a hand into his brokenness. Him, the coordinator, the offensive line. But I think, what are we getting ready to enter week 16? He's a broken football player to me right now.
Yeah, well, that gets to, like, it kind of is my point, though. It's just framing it in a different light and shifting the blame of whose fault it is. Like, the answers are there on paper. every offense works on paper. And by the way, the answers are there sometimes on the field. And Sam does need to hit them, and there's an accountability that he needs to take for that. And he's handled everything remarkably well for a young player. But as a coordinator, my job is to make it so he does. My job is to find the things that he does well and get to them in places where he can succeed. So there's a great example in this game that I'm sure you've seen. Nikki Javala tweeted it out. Mark Bullock included it in his recap that I was just reading earlier today. But
Craig, not to cut you off, that play in particular.
So the play we're talking about is the fourth down conversion to Sam Howell, or to Terry McLaurin. Sam misses Jonathan Williams wide open on a wheel route up the sideline.
Is that something that you think is happening multiple times a week? Every game this season, pretty much? Because that's a big miss, Craig. And like that in particular, like we do the in-game show, and I didn't even get the chance to, I normally don't get the chance to tweet. I was tweeting this week because I wasn't watching as much of the game, but you saw it right away. And I'm like, it goes back to my thing. It's like, what is he looking at pre and post snap? And like, if you are going to be really as limited as he is in that area, don't you think it puts more stress on Bieniemy as to what he can call? Bieniemy had a great line during his press conference last week. I don't know if he was being like condescending when he said it, but he said he's not going to put anything on the play script that Sam doesn't like. So with that being the circumstance, Sam is obviously comfortable enough with the play call that it's being called. He's just got to execute it. And it goes back to something I said back in October. I need him to make the layups more often, right? A lot of the times he's holding the ball, forcing the big play, and there are checkdowns available for him underneath. If you watched Drew Lock last night, I thought Drew Lock did a good job of taking what the defense was giving him, taking that 4-yard completion and getting yourself into 2nd and 6 instead of being in these 2nd and longs. Howell and Jalen Hurts are very similar with that they've really went for the home run ball a lot this year. And I feel like for Sam, you can't go broke taking a profit. And if you continue to work the stuff underneath, I think in essence, it opens up the stuff in the deep passing game as well.
No, I think you're 100% correct. And that is Sam's biggest role in this is like, if he could just make some layups, this offense would look different. There's a play where the one where he throws behind Gibson and Gibson stumbles for 6 yards as he falls and catches it out of bounds. If Sam like lofts the ball out in front of AG, he is so out leveraged, and the linebacker who's covering him in man coverage is so out leveraged that it might be a touchdown. Like he might catch a swing pass. It's a 7-yard in the air ball, or maybe it's a little farther than that out to the sideline, whatever, 12 yards in the air ball, mostly lateral. And instead of being a heck of a 6-yard catch, it's a whatever yard touchdown. And AG does the rest because he's got like one guy he's got to outrun. And I like Antonio Gibson in space in that matchup. At very least, it's a 25-yard gain. You know, the Jonathan Williams thing, like he should see that. But he's also getting fooled on some pretty basic stuff where, Terry, the ball that he throws to Terry that almost gets picked twice, where it's like the corner breaks it up from the safety and either guy should have had a pick. And Terry's just like, dude, he thinks it's cover 1, it's cover 2. And he doesn't rip the throw like it's cover 2. And it's just the disguise doesn't even like hold all the way till the ball is snapped. Safety starts rotating right, a second before. Like Sam's got to see that and make the mental adjustment. That's what it takes to exist successfully in this league. My query, whatever problem is that if you're not asking him to throw as much, he might feel less pressure to take those big plays. He might just be like, hey, my job is to keep this train on the tracks. I'm going to hand the ball off a ton. I'm going to do these predetermined, screen type of stuff a ton. Like the play calling looks different. I think the other thing is there's this thought that like when I make the training wheels analogy that it's, just what Sam likes. It's super pared down. That's actually the opposite of what is true. And it's funny because we had this conversation at the same time of year last year when it came to Taylor and what Scott Turner was doing. The actual way to make it easier for the quarterback is to give him more stuff. And what you do is, you use motion, you use formation, and it's harder mentally because there's a lot of verbiage. But when you add that stuff in, it unlocks the defense and makes the reads simpler. And what Sam is being asked to do right now is what Aaron Rodgers likes to do. It's fine if you're Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is the master of seeing through everything. I remember talking to Cole Holcomb about this a couple years ago when I was still on the beat and he was a rookie and they played Green Bay And Cole was like, it's the sickest thing I've ever seen because I'm just standing there in my like linebacker stance 4 yards off the ball, not remotely showing blitz. And Aaron would come up to the line of scrimmage and go, you're blitzing.
God.
Sam can't do that. So
Right.
why are you asking him to? How do you change the strength of the formation at the last second to cause problems and cause coverage busts that make throws easy and obvious? And they're not doing that. It's the same stuff over and over again, and defenses are all over it. And that's why he was successful earlier in the year, because they weren't on it yet. Now defenses know what to expect. They're on it. The windows are tighter. It requires more anticipation. And I don't think this offense has evolved to put more on Sam's plate to actually deleverage him, to use a term that Logan was using this morning. We were talking about this on Take Command.
So I don't know, when you say all of those things, I feel like that it goes back to the quarterback and his inability to handle things and the ability to allow the offense to grow.
Maybe.
But to me, it's all about what I said. This is like August. It is organizational malpractice to try and develop a rookie quarterback in year 4 of a 5-year deal. The way they handle this entire quarterback situation is embarrassing, and all parties involved should no longer be employed. Jacoby Brissett clearly gives you the best chance to win, yet he was given 0 reps this offseason. Jonathan Allen, Terry McLaurin, and the other veterans on this roster do not deserve that. Ron Rivera is using Sam Howell as a scapegoat. If he worked and they didn't make the playoffs, maybe he gets the chance to stick around. With Jacoby, based on how bad this defense is, you'd probably only be an 8-9 team anyway. That, with a veteran quarterback and no type of long-term answer at the position, means Ron was cooked anyway. You tell me for 16 games or 18 games that Jacoby wouldn't have been night and day better, and Terry's production would have been up, and all the things that we're complaining about with Sam under center. If Jacoby was under center, I don't think it would be the same issue, but I think the team would be just as bad.
Well, that's the point. Is like, actually, Ron did the organization a favor. Like,
but who is he to
coaches,
do the organization a favor? That's my whole thing with him. Like,
hold on, but the first problem with Ron is Ron's not good at the job, at any of the jobs that he has. Actually, the one he's best at is defensive coordinator. Defense actually looks like, playable, not good, but they're not NFL caliber like they were the first 14 weeks of the season. So that's nice. If you play Jacoby, do you have a better record? Probably, but you're still in the same spot, except for you don't actually know what Sam is. Like, at this point, you at least have whatever number of games this winds up being of Howell to make an evaluation on, and you might decide like, hey, this is worth it, and he has a season under his belt. I think the organizational malpractice comes with the fact that they expected him to do one of the hardest quarterback jobs in the league. The organizational malpractice is they stuck him behind, at best, an average offensive line. They leverage him like crazy, both in pass attempts and the stuff I just talked about of like, they don't give him a lot of help in seeing things. The staff is not good. And I don't know how much of that is on Ron versus incredibly bad luck and timing, both in that they couldn't officially hire EB until he was done with last season, and Eric was busy winning a Super Bowl. So some of the down staff hires were potentially unavailable because they already had other jobs. That also combined with the tightened purse strings around the sale, because when you're going through a business sale of any kind, you don't allow people to spend money because you don't want to add expenses. So that probably created an inferior staff, and a staff that, by the way, much of it is unfamiliar with the way Eric Bieniemy wanted to do things. Like, you don't think EB wanted to hire his own O-line coach? Like, that's a fourth coordinator, basically. The O-line coach is one of the most important positions on the team. Yes. And they, not only did they not bring in probably who they wanted, I have no idea if maybe EB was like, Travell Wharton looks great, sign me up. And he, along with Juan Castillo, with Juan's long history with Andy Reid, is actually what I want. Maybe that was the case. I don't know. I'm not reporting anything. I'm just saying, like, maybe.
No, you're making a hell of a point.
But Travell Wharton was the O-line coach. They knew it. They didn't get his contract done till like August.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So clearly there's a lot of stuff here, and it's really easy to just like blame it on Ron and say like he stinks at the job. And like, look, Ron, head coach, bad at job. Ron, personnel guy, bad at job. They built an offense that was supposed to be run heavy, and they came out of last season, we got to be run heavy. And they hired Bieniemy. Like, come on. You don't have a cohesive organizational ethos at all.
Nope.
But there's also, on top of that very severe problem, I think some bad luck and timing and like nobody's at fault. You want to blame the NFL. You want to blame Dan for not selling faster, for not forcing a sale. Like, fine. But there's just some stuff there that puts you in a bad spot. I think the good news is like, this is a lost season in every way. It sucks for Terry. It sucks for John. It sucks for a lot of people. It didn't, but like, I also look at the coaching staff and like the stuff that I've been talking about of like, okay, Ron, why didn't you fire Jack after the Bears game? Like, if this stuff was on the table, why didn't you either make it happen with Jack or get rid of Jack earlier? Like, I think all that stuff would have been fair game. I understood why they didn't do it, but it doesn't mean that it was actually a good idea.
This just goes to, it's one of the Ronisms that we get frustrated about over the last 4 years. He hangs on to the very last moment with every personnel decision, every coaching decision. Hence how Scott Turner got all of last year to function when it was very clear that he wasn't the guy for the job. Big picture, I'm glad all of this will be over in about a couple of months or so.
Right.
About
Not
a month
even,
and a
a
half.
couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks, and it'll all be over, and we get to talk about the fun offseason that's ahead for this team. Offensively, though, do you see, or in the final 3 weeks of the season, do you think that there's anything that Eric in the offense can show to where you maybe change your mind on him sticking around? Because I think seeing his offense being functioned with Jacoby at quarterback lets you know that it works. And I think the big talking point here recently is that the offense has gotten stagnant and it's come against good defenses. So it's not just the quarterback, it's Eric failing to adjust as well. First of all, I don't know how much stock you put into what Jacoby did at the end of the game Sunday, but it's kind of hard to ignore it.
No, I mean, the Rams' whole persona changed. Like, they're protecting the lead, their prevent defense. But like, Jacoby also operated with the confidence of a veteran who also could read and see the coverages and was like, oh, it's cover 6. I go here. Bang, completion. Like, oh, this is NFL open. I can make this out throw to Jahan. And Sam hasn't made that throw all year. I am not interested in keeping Eric here. I would be very interested in bringing Eric in, depending on who I was at another organization. If I'm the Chargers, I don't know that I necessarily want him as a head coach, but like if the Chargers want to hire another defensive guy, which seems unlikely, but let's say they look up, well, that's a bad example because they hired a Rams offense or defensive coordinator, and that's how they got Brandon Staley. But let's just roll with me here for a second.
You were gonna do Raheem Morris, weren't you?
Yeah, say they like Raheem Morris, and Ra is like, I think Eric's the right guy for Herbert. That's fine with me because you have a quarterback who can make the big time throws, who's seen enough, who's a veteran. Like, he's a top 7, let's say conservatively, quarterback in the league. He might be better than that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. If I have a young quarterback, I don't want Eric as my OC because I want someone who believes in insulating and incubating a quarterback in the way that Ben Johnson has with Jared Goff, in the way that, I mean, frankly, I know he's obviously a veteran, but that Kevin did with Kirk. Like, Kirk Cousins is limited. Kevin was like, I understand his limitations. I'm going to make sure he maximizes his strengths and minimizes his weaknesses. And Kirk's had the best years of his career with Kevin in Minnesota. Even Sean deleverages Stafford to an extent. Like, it's very quarterback heavy because Stafford can handle a lot, but they find ways with the running game and the hard play action to make things easier. Like, there are examples all around the league, from what they're doing with Stroud to Goff to, Stafford. And those are 3 quarterbacks at very different points in their careers and different skill levels. I want a coach who sees everything that way to be the next coach here, not someone who is like, hey, if you're awesome at quarterback, this systems could make you a champion. Because I don't think this team is going to have someone who's awesome at quarterback anytime soon, whether that's Sam, who could be good, or a young quarterback who's going to take time to incubate and time to develop into that.
So I get from that, like, you're not liking the way Eric has handled Sam's development. Therefore, him with another young quarterback, you're a little, there's risk that comes with it. Now, I will play devil's advocate with this. This situation, we've already acknowledged here in this segment, is just so different compared to a normal situation where you're developing a young quarterback. Maybe if Eric knew that there was some type of guaranteed past this year, maybe he would have developed Sam a little bit slower through the process. And I think...
Why do you think that?
Because he knows he's got next year to work with him too, not just try to force everything this year and make it look good right now.
I don't think they're trying... Like, here's my thing. What was this plan supposed to accomplish? It should either accomplish a positive growth trajectory for Sam. It hasn't. Or it should, because that's the thing that would have saved their jobs, is like, hey, he gets better as the year. If they had their year in reverse, then maybe, and they start, they finish with 2 wins and like they're whatever they were through 5 games, then maybe that's a chance. And Sam's thrown for 300 yards by the end of the season. It's done the reverse, and it's lost them a ton of football games. Like why was this a good plan?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I don't necessarily agree with the plan in terms of how much they put on his plate from the get-go. I always thought that was crazy that like through the first 4 weeks, he's leading the NFL in pass attempts and you're not getting blown out. It's not like he's doing it because you're behind. That's just the way that you decided to call the game.
Yeah.
That is where I don't really have any leniency towards Eric Bieniemy and the offensive staff. That wasn't the best idea. But the reason that it was kind of justified, like you said at the beginning, is because it was working. Like, as you alluded to, defenses hadn't seen him in this before. But then there was this adjustment period that everyone goes through in the NFL where you kind of grind the tape and understand what the other offense is trying to do. My problem is when that happened, there was a failure to adjust from Eric. And Sam seems like he just wasn't ready to take the next step forward. A lot of his problems that he's having this year existed while he was in college. Would I be crazy to say that he hasn't really gotten better since UNC? He's the same guy pretty much.
Well, he's an NFL. He's an NFL
but
version of it, right? Like he's gotten better. Like if Sam went back to North Carolina now, he'd kill everybody. He'd be the best player in college football by a mile. But that's not a fair comparison. Like he's on the track that I think was predictable coming out of Carolina, and unfortunately, the sack to pressure ratio stuff has been an issue. And I think that I don't know, man. Like it's tough because I also love his makeup. I love Sam Howell's character as a football player, as a competitor. It's important to him, all that kind of stuff. And that makes it hard to give up on him. And also like even Matt Miller, who loves Jaden Daniels as much as anybody, ESPN's draft analyst told us last week, like outside of Caleb Williams, he wouldn't replace Sam with Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or anybody else in this draft. So like hitting on the next guy, like that's the other part of this to wrap this up, because stunningly we're going long here. Is Lynnell's with us for Overreaction Tuesday. It's not about comparing Sam to some like hypothetical. It's not a binary. Do you keep him or do you not? It's what's he compared to the alternative. And I don't know that there's going to be a better alternative. And I think that's where what he did earlier this year is really reassuring. It's like, we've already seen him have success in the NFL. What happens if he gets a better environment around him and more experience, because he is still young? Yeah. Can he grow into a more consistent good player?
I think that's the big question. But in terms of like Matt Miller's comments, I think while it's relevant because this is what he does for a living, fans out there, doesn't matter what any of these ESPN pundits think, whoever they hire to do the job, whoever they fall in love with, will dictate and determine the plan. They could love Michael Penix and they feel that they can get Michael Penix in the middle of the first and they trade back. There's so many scenarios that you could go with here. I guess I'll flip it and put it back on you. Do you think Sam is the week 1 starter next year, Craig Hoffman? I know we're looking way out there.
I have no idea, and I really am not that interested in entertaining the question because, like, it's too early. Yeah. Like, we're still so early in the draft process. The scouting, the interviews, all that kind of stuff hasn't happened. The medical is going to be really important for some of these guys. And we still have 3 more games on Sam, and I have no idea who the coach and coordinator is going to be. So that seems like a lot of relative information.
No, it is.
I think right now, like if I'm trying to be odds maker, it's like 50-50, which I think a week ago it was 70-30, but
it's changing constantly, which is crazy.
We'll see. It's also got 3 really ridiculously tough defenses that he's got to face in the next couple of weeks. So yikes on that. At least the game flow shouldn't get too out of hand this week because the Jets offense also stinks. I'd rather be offensively the Commanders than the Jets, tell you that much.
They better not win.
We'll see. Remember, Lynnell, what's the rule? Dumbest possible outcome at all times.
Yep.
Always. Lynnell Willingham, what's your schedule? In with the Rooster tomorrow?
In with the Rooster tomorrow. Light week for your boy, but me and him are probably going to scream at each other for about 3 hours.
I think you'll get enough in that 3 hours to make up for the rest of the week. Also, of course, catch Lynnell regularly on Overtime on 106.7. The Fan. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. So, Anthony, I have been getting destroyed by spam calls the last 3 days. I don't know what's up. I don't know why it's been the last 3 days, but it's driving me crazy. I don't like it.
Do you answer every spam call?
No.
Do you answer every call?
No.
Oh.
I answer calls from numbers I know, calls I'm expecting. Like if I'm going to go on with Buffalo Radio and I get a call from Buffalo, I'll answer it. Sometimes I'm like, why is someone from Buffalo call? Oh, I said I'd go on the show at 3:15. Hey, it's Greg. Hey, this is John from WGR in Buffalo. Hi, John. So numbers I know, calls I expect, and sometimes even if I know the number, I'm like, why are you calling me? You can leave a voicemail. You don't ever call me. Probably either a butt dial or I'll determine based off the voicemail or the text message you're about to send me whether we want to chat. But numbers I know, numbers I'm expecting. And the other one I will answer is DC numbers, depending on what it is. Like they're pretty good about marking potential spam, but like it could be like a business that, a dry cleaner or hey, your stuff is ready. Doctor, like DC numbers sometimes I'll pick up if I think there's a reason I could be getting a call from a local business.
Yeah, I mean,
but like so my phone number though, my cell phone is an 864 number, upstate South Carolina, where I grew up and where I got a cell phone. And so when I get calls from unknown numbers that are 864 numbers, which is basically all I'm getting right now, not answering.
do you think you have any outstanding tickets in the state of South Carolina?
No. I've lived in South Carolina since I was 18 years old.
Yeah, but you go down there and visit, though.
Yeah, but I don't think I have any I don't think they'd be calling about outstanding tickets. I also don't think I've ever gotten a parking ticket in South Carolina.
Oh.
Speeding ticket when I was younger, but.
Oh, you remember that one? It was your first one.
Yeah, I got like one or two when I was a kid. Didn't we all?
No.
You never gotten a speeding ticket?
Never in my 27 years of life.
Really?
I'm joking, Craig, of course.
I was about to say.
In D.C., you're definitely liable to get a speeding ticket.
Have you gotten pulled over or just the traffic cameras?
I've gotten pulled over driving to Syracuse, but that's it.
Did I ever get pulled over? I definitely got pulled over at least once driving.
I was
to or
going
from
like
Syracuse.
82 or something like that on a
Bro,
it was a
you
Saturday morning.
You
though.
just
That's
sparked a memory for me. Yeah, there was, because I would drive from Syracuse to Long Island where my grandparents were, and then I'd fly out of New York or I'd spend some time with them or in New York City. And I remember one time, I feel like I saw the lights going on behind me and there was an exit right then. So I peeled off the exit, turn, and then eventually like saw the cop go by and it was just like, if they were coming for me, they missed me.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely done that before. I think I was driving with my friend Cameron one time. She saw the police officer. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
She saw them, and she's like, you're not going to slow down? I'm like, slow down for what? And I drive past the cop. I see him pull out, so I move like 3 lanes to the right, slow down a ton, and then he drives right by. I don't know if, there was another white car on the road, but I definitely got away with one because I was speeding.
So back to the phone call thing. I was talking about this with my buddy David this morning, and he's like, they're just trying to steal your voice for AI, right? And I was like, what? Because I have occasionally answered them, and I'm like, take me off your list. Because I'm, they have the federal do not call list. They have all these things, and of course, all these spammers don't care. But he's like, all you need to do is like say hello, and then they capture your voice, and then they can like call your family and make it sound like you. And like, I don't know if you've heard some of this fake AI voice stuff. It's terrifying. It's super accurate.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking about that on the way in today. I was like, clearly they don't know it's me. Because if you want my voice, I'm not trying to tempt anybody here. I feel like this is a silly thing to put out in the universe, because then if I get or someone in my family gets duped, I'm going to feel very stupid. But my voice in terms of voices that are publicly available, I've got to be one of the 1% in the world. I literally talk into a microphone for 3 hours a day on a solo radio show, do 2 other podcasts, and have been doing roughly that amount of work for the better part of a decade. Certainly that amount of work for 2 years, and then I've been doing other stuff where my voice has been publicly available in massive quantities for a long time. So if you wanted to find my voice, it wouldn't be that hard. Not that I'm encouraging anybody.
Too late.
But I'm just saying, like, you don't have to. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're AI trying to get me, then can you at least not annoy me by spam phone calling me? Just steal my voice off the internet. Yeah. Please, actually, don't steal my voice off the internet. But it seems like it'd be a lot easier. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea, to be honest, that you put out into the world. Just saying.
Kevin Sheehan joins us next. It's the Hoffman Show, final hour here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Chat's been super active today. Thanks, everyone who is tuning in there. And joining us now is our good buddy Kevin Sheehan, of course, hosts every single day. Earlier in the day on the station, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Also, the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. Mr. Sheehan, happy holidays. How are you?
Craig, happy holidays to you as well. What's going on?
Oh, just trying to get through to the end of the year. I feel like this time of year for us in this business can be super exciting because you're in the middle of a playoff race, or you're just like everyone else in the universe where you're just like, I have no motivation to do this work, whatever your work is. And then you just want to kind of get to the new year. And I feel like this year, more than any other, I feel that in a major way because we know the new year will bring the coaching search and all those other things.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think that at least Ron gave us an early gift by benching Howell and putting Brissett in there on Sunday. That was a nice little early gift. Gave us something to talk about for a couple of days anyway. But absolutely. I mean, after, the big picture has always been all season long. This is a transition year. Whatever happens, happens. Dan is gone. And in January of 2024, there's going to be a whole new start to this football organization and, a new group leading it for the first time in a quarter century. And, for those of us that have had this team as an important part of our lives, sometimes an outsized important part of our lives, that's something to look forward to and to be able to kind of watch.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So the question of the transition is, I mean, we pretty much knew that Rivera would be gone, that the front office would change over. There was always this question of whether Bieniemy would be a part of the future, and then obviously Howell. How much did Sunday, if any, change your thoughts on either of those two guys being a part of the future?
I don't think anything in the way that Sam Howell played or Eric Bieniemy called the game changed my opinion, which has all year been, I'm going to wait and watch, the majority, if not all 17 games and hopefully come to a conclusion, which I was nowhere near on as it relates to either one of them. But I think that benching Sam Howell, and Craig, I don't know how much you thought this was a telling moment, but for development all year long, much worse conditions in game. We're going to let him play through it. We're going to let him work his way through it. This year is about developing the quarterback. Yanking him in that moment said to me that they had gotten to the point where they were frustrated with him, and not with him personally, but with some of the growth that they had hoped to see that they weren't necessarily seeing. Do more with things that were there that he didn't see. And they, I think, maybe let their emotions get the better of them and they pulled them. I don't think it was a great idea at the time or in hindsight. Or maybe it was to benefit Sam. Hey, let's take a look at what Jacoby does. Let's give you a break from, perhaps another bad ending. And to me, that's telling because I don't think the majority of people who are following this felt at any point that the group out there was anything other than really pleased with his development. So I thought Sunday was telling. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is, the chances increased exponentially, especially if this group were to stay, which they're not. But with a new regime, that they will be exploring very seriously a quarterback in the upcoming draft.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And as we've been talking about ad nauseum, and I know you said the same thing, like it obviously is going to depend on what you think of the quarterbacks coming out, which I don't think most of us have done any kind of real evaluation on yet. And obviously we have 3 more games of Sam. I tend to actually believe them, though, to an extent when they're like, yeah, we did this for Sam. I actually think it was the right move to pull him for a development because sometimes you just need a reset. And he seemed to be spiraling in a way that he had not all year. And I would say, Kevin, I think Sunday was the first time that I feel like I saw him break. Like he had been so resilient all year. And I just felt like I was watching a different guy. And he's had bad games, but even against Buffalo, when he throws all those picks, like he comes back and he's keeping on going on, and he's trying to do the right things. And it just felt like Sunday he was so scattered and broken that pulling him was the right thing to kind of hopefully reset him for the final three.
Perspective's everything, I guess. I didn't feel like it was anywhere near one of his worst games. I didn't feel like it was anywhere near the moments that we've seen at various times this year when he was being battered and being hit and truly at maybe physical risk, whether it was him or the offensive line or whatever. It doesn't really matter anymore. Well, it does matter, but on some level, really that should have been, if they felt that way in the moment, maybe it was, hey, he was frustrated. He knew he missed some things, on the interception. Maybe he missed Terry, earlier and had to come back to him late and had it picked. But the drive before that was the one that they had, were coming off a touchdown drive, and he threw a beautiful ball to Terry McLaurin that should have been, flagged for DPI. So I don't know. They know, and if they said, look, he really was, exhausted, tired, frustrated himself, and it would have been diminishing returns to keep him into the game, then I understand that. But in watching the game, at no moment did I feel like he was physically, at risk or that he was in the midst of his worst game. It wasn't a good game for him, but he's played worse games this year.
Yeah, he's had worse outcomes. I'm trying to think back. The Buffalo game was obviously horrible, but I think in a way, like the fact that he wasn't under duress and didn't feel as if he was in physical harm's way, and he still was, patting the football overly and vacating clean pockets and doing all the bad stuff that he does when he's bad. I almost wonder if that's why they pulled him. It's like, hey, man, this isn't Buffalo where you're, 9 sacks, 4 interceptions. This isn't the Giants where you don't know where the blitz is coming from every play. Like, it's there. You're not reading it. You're missing stuff. And I almost wonder if kind of what you're saying played into their decision, whether it's right or whether it's wrong.
No, that's a good point. It wasn't a duress game for him, and it still wasn't a good game. And he was, as you said, vacating the pocket pretty quickly. And there were opportunities that he was missing. And maybe what was going on is, he was coming back and he was sitting down next to Eric, and Eric's like, what are you seeing? And he's like, I don't know. And maybe it just got to the point where they felt it was in his best interest to sit, the last 7.5 minutes out, especially since in the moment it was 28-7. And it's not like there was much of a chance that they were going to come back in the game. All of that is possible. The bottom line, though, is whatever the reason, they've gotten to a point with him where it's stalled, if not gone backwards a bit. And I think that there was at various times, I think at various times it's been, forward momentum, and then I think you take a step back. But I always felt it was a step and a half forward with a step back, that there was more good than not good for most of the year, that there was promise, there was intrigue, not in, maybe they've found the next elite quarterback, but maybe they have found a starting NFL quarterback. And to me, maybe they told you, put the brakes on that for right now.
Yeah, no, I think we're 100% on the same page there. Kevin Sheehan is with us, of course, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show here on the Team 980. This is the Hoffman Show, which also streams live on YouTube at the Team 980. All of our shows always live on the free Odyssey app. All right, Kevin, now time for the really fun sports radio reckless speculation. If Jacoby Brissett is the starter all year, how different does this season look as we extrapolate from 10 throws?
Because the defense was so bad all year long and so disappointing, 2 wins better. Maybe they're 6-8, maybe they're 7-7, with an outside shot. But with the 49ers and the Cowboys looming, they probably don't make the playoffs. They probably go 8-9, 7-10 or something like that. I've been a fan of Jacoby Brissett going back to NC State, so I definitely talked him up in a big way during the offseason, not as a guy that would be, the answer long term, but as a guy that can really play. And by the way, last year, had maybe the best year of his career with a Cleveland defense that was very injured and much different than the one that they had this year. So I think he was the better quarterback to play this year, but they decided, and I wasn't against it, to take a look at what Sam could be in terms of ceiling and upside and down the road, because we knew what Jacoby's was, which is, high-end backup, low end starter for most of his career. Could it have changed? Could he turn into Geno Smith? Maybe, but that wasn't what I think anybody thought. And so the plan to develop Sam, to see what he had, to see if there was a future there, I don't think was a bad one. Tommy brought up a point early in the year, and he brought it up again to me today on the podcast. He said, the one problem when you sort of take on that kind of direction and you're as, transparent as they've been with it, is guys like Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson and Jahan Dotson in his second year, you're risking wasting their year. And in many ways, I don't want to say it was a waste because they were decent offensively at times. They moved the ball. They threw it a lot, clearly. But it certainly wasn't a winning, team on either side of the ball.
Well, and that gets to kind of my bigger point, which is it's not so much like they didn't have to waste the year. They decided to waste the year with a very silly way of approaching this that I also don't think was the best thing for developing the quarterback, which is being the most pass-heavy team in the league, not really tailoring a system to their very, very talented outside receiving personnel, to not investing in the O-line. Like, I think that it's hard for people to hold these two thoughts at once, that, like, this O-line is not the worst in the NFL, that it is actually a fairly average O-line, and that is also completely unacceptable for this quarterback. And that's the thing I'll never understand is if you were going to go down this route, how was this the plan, either to win football games or develop Sam Howell? Because we've seen it's accomplished neither.
Yeah, I mean, I still look at Sam Howell and I think, put him into, a sort of Shanahan-style scheme, whether it's inside zone, outside zone, marrying the run and pass with boot and keeper and all that stuff. Man, just his skill set seems to fit that kind of an offense. And, there's always this old adage when it comes to young rookie quarterbacks or inexperienced quarterbacks, the best friend of one is a running game. That was never going to be a part of the plan. And, it's funny, Craig, because early in the season, I remember saying, I wonder if this is like some sort of long game on Sam. Like, we're just going to let him throw it around the park and he's going to end up with all these attempts and we're going to know whether or not he can be that kind of quarterback. And if he isn't, then we'll move on. But yeah, it wasn't clearly in hindsight the best kind of way to use him. He's not at this point in his very young career, definitely not a pure drop back, 5-7 step drop back quarterback. He just doesn't see it well, and he doesn't feel it well. And when they went to the quick game stuff, they stuck with throwing the football, but that worked much better for him. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious now, and it's been obvious at times during the year that certainly the pure drop back game was never a fit. Never.
Yeah, no, 100%. Kevin Sheehan's with us here on the Hoffman Show. Was there any, going back to kind of the Brissett angle of this and bringing this all together, was there ever any off-ramp for you this year that you would have considered pulling the plug and going, no, it's time to go to Jacoby?
No, and I at the beginning of the year, it was kind of a question that we all kind of pondered and asked and took calls on. And I said, it's stupid to just give him a blanket 17 games. What if he's absolutely terrible? Like, what if you are just he can't do it? Right. Of course you would pull it earlier. Like, this idea of just giving him 17 games to see, I always thought was silly. But the truth is, once we got through the second Philly game, maybe before that, I had seen enough, to say, let's see more. Let's just keep seeing more. There was never a point in which I thought he was completely overwhelmed and couldn't do it and this was a complete waste of time. Did I ever at any point think, oh, they've got their answer? No, not even close to it. And I've kind of mocked some of those people who have just said, oh, we've got him. It's Joe Montana, number 2. If you can't see it, you're an idiot. But there's no doubt that I think there were times where you're like, wow, he's got a good arm. He can make every throw. Ball comes out quickly when they're in that quick game. He's really good at extending plays and making plays off schedule. There might be something here. Maybe they've got an Andy Dalton. That was always my high-end comp. I'm like, maybe, if Sam Howell is, continues to progress, maybe you get, a number 14 to 18 quarterback in the league in 2 years like Andy Dalton became. So no, I never suggested he can't do it. Let's move on.
I would say Sunday was the first time I was like, I wonder what this looks like with Brissett. That was the only – I mean, obviously there's some of the blowouts where you're like, do you just pull him because this game's so far out of reach and there's no point. But Sunday was the first time that I had a thought earlier in the game where I was like, what does this look like with Jacoby? And obviously we kind of found out late, but no Aaron Donald on the field, prevent defense, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you had asked the question, was there an off-ramp because all you wanted this year was to contend and make the playoffs, I probably would have viewed it differently.
Sure.
But the plan for them all season long, and we sort of just kind of fell into it, was this is a year in which, they're going to find out whether or not the 5th round, pick in 2022 can be their answer and they can build around them.
So the actually more interesting off ramp that 100% should have happened in the benefit of hindsight, or with the benefit of hindsight, and I think a lot of us would have liked to see without the hindsight needed, is this defense was better on Sunday, and they are playing faster, and obviously their personnel has gotten worse with the trades. We all knew that was a part of the equation, just a worth it one. At least most of us think that in terms of what they got in return for Montez specifically. But I just wonder, Kevin, like, if you're Ron Rivera, how do you try to justify not making some of these changes either with Jack and just being like, Jack, we're going to try it my way, or getting rid of him in the middle of the season when you see a more confident secondary, when you see a more cohesive pass rush, when you see linebackers not lost all the time? It just seems like this is so obvious and there's so much low-hanging fruit that to not take that off ramp earlier in the season is going to be the thing that is actually more detrimental and more dooming of the 2023 season in a vacuum without any other context than anything that happened on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, you have better vision than I have. Although it's funny because I did say, and I had somebody just blast me because I read it this afternoon. I did say I actually thought they played fast and that they gave real effort and they looked energetic on Sunday defensively. But other than that, the big chunk plays, 7 of them, 16 yards or more, 6-point whatever yards per play, the miscommunication, which are devastating plays, like the touchdown pass to Cooper, the inability to stop the run. Although when I talked on Monday about the team, I'm like, I thought Daron Payne looked good. I thought that KJ Henry shows signs. I think that, Khaleke Hudson, undersized, really tries hard. It really actually hits hard. I liked Quan Martin, actually, and the level of speed he plays at. I liked him on teams earlier in the season. I think there were individual performances, but man, if we go back to the beginning of this season, the number one stunner for me, and I would think a lot of people, is that at the very least we thought we had a good defense, and it was really an abject disaster after week 3. I mean, I thought they played well against Arizona. I think they won the Arizona game. I think the Jamin Davis play in the Denver game turned that game completely around. The offense came to life as well.
100%.
And I actually thought defensively they played well against Buffalo. They just, got away from them late because they couldn't score and were turning it over. But after that, my God, they just, every week it was one explosive play after another. If the Jets end up with explosive plays on Sunday, I mean, because that, Craig, may be the worst offensive NFL team we've seen in a few years. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they do.
No, I mean, Garrett Wilson's really good. In fairness to them and their potential explosiveness, Garrett Wilson.
Brees Hall's really good.
Yeah, Brees Hall's awesome. And they have generated some big explosive plays in the run game, so it feels like that's probably going to happen. Have you talked about the Forbes thing at all the last couple of days?
The what? I'm sorry.
The Emmanuel Forbes 6 snaps that he got on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I had Nikki Javala on the show today. We talked a little bit about it. It's clear. I mean, how do you get to the point at the end of the year where you're not playing for anything, and it should be, let's take a look at everybody and see, and your first-round pick is out there for 6 snaps? It's odd. I don't know what to make of it. You may have a point of view here.
My point of view is it's very stupid. It's impossibly dumb.
You mean just get him out there and play him?
Yeah, like, are you a better team with Kendall Fuller out there? Probably, but
something that they're concerned about.
Unless it's injury, I don't care. Like, you've got to get him out there because you drafted him in the first round, and he's got to get the experience and the looks and be able to bank that stuff. Right, and if he's not healthy, then why is he dressed and playing 6 snaps in the first place?
They can answer. And
I don't expect you to have an answer, to be clear, because I don't think there is.
I don't have an answer. I actually like the player based on everything I saw in college, and I thought he'd be a good fit for the way they played defense last year in particular. But they played more man this year, and things changed. And it's funny about the draft, all the early conversations about the draft. And my point of view is you can't look at a draft 5 weeks into a season, 7 weeks into a season. It's 2-3 years down the road. But I'll tell you what, 14 games into the season, and you're 4-10. And your first-round pick is healthy, and he's only out there for 6 snaps is troubling.
Yeah, it's also coaching malpractice, and I feel like it deserves some attention. So we could give it the proper attention here at the end of our chat. Kevin Sheehan on 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. daily here on the Team 980. Also, do not miss the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. Kevin, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Are you around this weekend? Are you shutting off all devices for the holidays?
No. I'm going to be totally my boys in town.
Nice.
My wife already has been warned that Christmas night dinner has to start early enough so that we can hunker down to watch one of the games of the last few years in the regular season. I mean, Ravens 49ers on Monday night is I can't remember a late AFC NFC matchup like this one.
Well, it's funny because if you go all the way back to 2007, you had Giants-Patriots, which you did not realize at the time was so significant. It was just like, can the Giants be the team that ends the perfect regular season? Turns out they did it in the Super Bowl instead. But that's the one that immediately comes to mind. That's also not that recent anymore.
Remember about that game, the Giants had things wrapped up, I'm pretty sure, as well. And they didn't have to go out there and really push the Patriots to try to end it, but they did.
Yeah. Probably learned a thing or two.
Yeah. But no, great football all weekend long. Just what certain people and certain families want to hear when people are like, wait a minute, we got Dolphins Cowboys going on Christmas Eve at 4:00.
Yeah. And also Commanders Jets. There's great football and also our game. All right. Well, in that case, if you're geeking up for football, we'll talk to you Sunday on the pregame show, and I'm sure we'll talk soon offline as well. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Sounds good, Craig. Thanks.
That is Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we will take a couple more of your calls on Howell, Bieniemy, 301-230-0980. Taking calls in the 6 o'clock hour? Yeah, we'll do that next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, I just gave you a solo shot. There. So you can rock out a little bit.
I was dancing.
I got you.
And look, you missed it.
I mean, everyone that wasn't watching did.
Oh, okay.
The scores of people that are watching the YouTube stream at the Team 980, yep, they got the full Anthony Haney experience over there in the producer studio, ISO'd and everything without my dumb face in the way. So we'll take your calls, 301-230-0980. It's the Ace Law listener line on Sam Howell, Eric Bieniemy, kind of the offensive ecosystem, if you will, of the Commanders. We had as packed of phone lines as we've ever had in the first hour talking about all this. So I want to let y'all get in the 6 o'clock hour here as well. Let's start off with Robert in Annapolis. Robert, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Merry Christmas, fellas. I wanted to ask you if you or any of your colleagues have asked or thought about asking Scott Turner to come on as a guest to maybe discuss Sam Howell and anything else about the Commanders he might want to discuss.
I haven't really thought deeply about it. After my criticism of Scott last year, I don't know whether he'd be that interested in joining me, to be honest, but like, it was never personal. It was just professional. It's me doing my job, evaluating him doing his job, but I would be interested. Is there anything in particular, let's say all of a sudden that we reach out to Scott Turner and get him, was there anything in particular you'd be interested in hearing from him?
One curiosity is why he was never given a starting assignment before the end of the year. Was there an issue with learning a system or whatever else may have been resulting in him not being given a start? And just really his assessment of his potential to be a starting NFL quarterback.
I think that would be interesting. I think the start part of it, thanks for the call, Robert, is that's pretty easy. We've been over this a million times. They wanted to start Carson, obviously, the beginning of the year. Sam was a bit of an afterthought. Carson was bad and then broke his finger. Taylor was the obvious backup. And Taylor played well enough, long enough, that you get to the end of the season, all of a sudden there's a playoff spot on the line, and you're to then give a rookie his first career start then would have been nuts. Now, it might have worked out. It might have, in hindsight, actually been the best option, but it would have been like beyond ballsy to do that at that time. It's nonsensical. Hey, let's start a fifth-round rookie in December on the road against Cleveland with the playoffs on the line. What? No. I think they should have just stuck with Taylor, but again, that's last year's fight, not this one, or this year's. I would like to know certainly what he's thought of the progression of Sam, and I'd also like to know what he would think of the setup. Like, hey, Scott, if you were in the meetings, in the personnel meetings this offseason, knowing Sam would be your starter, how would you have designed this offense? How would you have built it? Who knows whether he would be telling the truth in terms of what he would have planned on doing in May versus having all the right answers seemingly in front of us right now, which is something different than what Eric is doing. But I do think it would be interesting. I would certainly be interested in many offensive minds. I know, like, obviously Gruden said a lot when he's been on the station with Russell. But, yeah, I think it's interesting, but also, like, we do this thing with coaches where they fail as coaches and then they become the smartest person on TV. And this is also why I can't stand when fans hear an analyst say something that's slightly more insightful than the average analysis they've heard their whole life on television and think that that's the smartest person that's ever talked about football. And it's like, no, just you're not used to being in football conversations at this level. So when someone talks about a bow concept and a backside dig, you're like, that guy should be the head coach. It's like, actually, it's more complicated than that. Let's go to DH. DH, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Craig, what's up, man? How you feeling, man? Happy holidays to you.
I'm feeling good, man. Happy holidays to you as well.
Hey, man, one thing you just said that I thought was very poignant before I get into my point. is that football is complicated. Man, I tell people all the time, football is so hard, right?
Yeah.
And we see guys on Saturdays and Sundays that make it look so easy. But football is very difficult and it's very intricate. So I kind of give these coaches and these players a little break sometimes. But in regards to Ron Rivera, man, in his whole tenure, if you look back over it for the past few years, Ron has gotten passes at many points, whether it's for health reasons or whether it's because he's a nice guy or whether, Dan always put him in a bad spot. But if you look recently, man, a lot of these issues that have been in the organization have been Ron Rivera created. How he handled some of those issues in the off season, as far as who said what, or how Ron comes to the podium and he's just too candid about certain things, or even the benching on Sunday, man. Like, you gotta understand where we are. You didn't bench him when we was getting smoked by 37 to the Buffalo Bills early in the season. You want to protect his confidence then? Okay, cool. But late in the season, when you're out of the playoff mix, you want to just see something different. You want to spark. A spark for what? Man, the team is dead, bro. Granted, you show up every week because you have a job to do and your goal is to win. But that team has checked out, and the coaching staff has checked out. And you can tell by their play. They come out dead every week. And even on breaks, man, they just don't come out looking right. So I feel like he created that issue last week with Jacoby. And the minute Jacoby threw a touchdown pass, Twitter was set ablaze. Jacoby should have been playing all year, da-da-da. And I'm just like, man, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
The one thing I will say, DH,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, first, I don't think it was a mistake to bench him. Because I do think in some way you owe it to everybody else to hey, let's get Terry and Jahan. They've been out there running cardio. Let's make sure they get a football every now and again. So there's that, and I guess better late than never on the confidence side of it. But I also think to your point, if you're going to be smart enough, this is really A to B advice, me to you, more than everyone else listening. If you're smart enough to know this stuff is hard, if you're smart enough to know that this is nuanced and multi-layered and all these things, you gotta be smart enough sometimes to just ignore Twitter, right? Fans are gonna say what they're gonna say. People are gonna yell because they're angry and because they care. And that's not actually me even hating on Twitter. It's just realizing what it is. But people are passionate and they care, and that's why, frankly, I have a job and why Ron gets paid a bunch of money for his. If it's just people out in the grass playing football, it's not a $1 billion enterprise that we're talking about here with a whole multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar, actually no, multi-billion-dollar media apparatus around it. All this is happening because people care a lot, and I'm always sensitive to that. That doesn't mean we actually have to value the specific opinions in the heat of a moment, right? And that's the thing about Sunday with this is would they have a better record with Brissett? Maybe. I actually don't even know because their defense is so bad, and there was a point where Sam looked like he was on the right trajectory and all that kind of stuff. But what we do know is we now have all this data about Sam versus another 8 and 9 season where they missed the playoffs. And they're going to have a top 5 pick, and that's better than this season, as frustrating as it is to me. You tell me as a fan, but to me, this is a better outcome than if they started Brissett and it was a better record.
On your face. We can hear it in your voice.
No, for sure. I think you get a chance. You got a chance to see what Sam is. And I'm a biggest Sam supporter. As a Carolina fan, I watched Sam, his whole career. So, yeah, you got a chance to see over the course of games what he can be. And then now it's up to the new regime to make that decision when they come in. If they want to keep him or if they want to move on from him. I'm perfectly fine with that because at least we got to see. But just the information, the iteration of what we have right now is not it. It's not going to work.
Totally.
And we're seeing it. We see it every week. We see it imploding. But as this becomes a growing thing, every year about this time we out the mix anyway. I'm already getting prepared for basketball.
Well, the Wizards are doing great, so we're in fantastic shape there. Although I guess if you're a Carolina college basketball fan, you at least got that to fall back on. DH, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. Call anytime.
Thanks, man. Peace.
All right, that is all of our callers on the Ace Law listener line. 301-230-0980 is, of course, the phone number, and it is brought to you by, you guessed it, Ace Law. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. When we get back, we will wrap up this edition of the Hoffman Show. A little bit of nonsense and, of course, real things real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app with a vibing super producer Anthony Haney. I'm merely the host, Greg Hoffman. And I feel like this was a good show. I think we got a really good one today.
Fantastic show. You know, we got input from the callers. We talked some Wizards a little bit. We went back to the Sam Howell conversation. Lynnell came in with an overreaction that I thought was a little excessive, but that's besides the point.
What did you think of Lynnell's overreaction? I also just realized apparently I got 3 more hours to do with Lynnell this week. Lynnell is filling in for Logan on pregame.
Oh,
I'd much rather do pregame with Lynnell than postgame. Yeah. Yes, I would say that to his face. I probably will say that to his face, to be honest.
Because postgame, he's probably gonna be uncaged.
Pregame, he's filled with it's angst. Although at this point, I don't even know if he's that angsty. But then the game starts and he just gets super mad again, and he's just like, "I hate this team," and I'm like, "Good, okay, you relax now."
Yeah. But
what did he overreact to that you were not?
I don't think Sam is broken. He said Sam was broken at this point of the season.
He looked broken on Sunday, bro. Like he was so. Oh God, that hurt. I think the people heard that through the microphone.
Yeah, I heard it as well.
That was me smashing my knee on the underside of the board.
Yeah.
Ow. He was really bad, man.
He was.
Mark Bullock in his breakdown, of course, former Washington Post, former The Athletic, now writes Substack and does a lot of film clips and stuff. He's awesome. He thought it was his worst performance of the season.
Worse than the Bills?
Yeah, because there was so much stuff there. Like, unlike the Bills, right? The Bills, the offensive line did not perform particularly well.
Mm-hmm.
He invited a ton of pressure. And there was kind of that shell-shocked. There's also a much better defense. Like, it was much more predictable. The Rams' defense is okay.
Yeah.
But it's not particularly good, and there's definitely things available. I mean, there's touchdowns that are right there. And you're just like, you never looked, man. Like, the best example is the 4th down play where Jonathan Williams winds up wide open up the sideline. And it's a play that you and I have called for touchdowns on Madden a million times. You know what the play is?
The will. Yeah.
It's the mesh spot.
Yep.
That's all it is. Typically in Madden, at least in the playbook that I use,
if you're running man, if you're running man, that is going to be a touchdown every time.
Yeah, all you have to do is kind of step up in the pocket a little bit, allow enough time for the running back to get out there and loft it out over the linebacker's head because you have a linebacker in space running with a linebacker, and that's when they play it right. The Rams linebacker, who is matched up man-to-man on Jonathan Williams, takes one of the dumbest risks you'll ever see from a linebacker. He fakes an A-gap blitz, and what happens is Sam, right before the snap, motions Jonathan Williams to give him a running start on this wheel route. So Williams has the linebacker out-leveraged, and the linebacker is busy faking this blitz, and, it's obvious if you're an NFL quarterback, you can say, that's the guy who's got him in man coverage, and it's obvious it's man-to-man, and he, realizes, I am toast. And he goes to get out of there, and he gets caught up in the wash in the A-gap, and then he runs into Curtis Samuel. Smashes into Curtis Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
And where is Sam looking? At Curtis Samuel. At that mesh area over the middle of the field. And if he just looks out left, Jonathan Williams is all by his own self. And you're just like, why is it that you didn't look there? And then there's some stuff later where there's like certain coverages, and the Rams did a good job of disguising some things. Oh, it looks like too high. Now it's 1. But it wasn't that complicated. And then there's other times where it was. And like this is the hard part about, defense in the NFL, or reading defenses, I should say, is I was looking at Logan sent me his notes from the game before we did take command. And he, by the way, if you've been with us all show long, told you I'm getting at least one spam call every 90 minutes.
And you just got one.
Right there.
Wow.
If anyone wants to spam the spammer, be careful. They might be trying to get your voice for AI. But that's the number.
Send them my way, Craig.
No, you don't want that.
No, I'm joking.
Well, send a voicemail. Goodbye. But Logan sent me his notes before we did our film review this morning, and he writes down the coverage, and a lot of it is like 6 ? 4 ? 2, and it's not because Logan's a dummy. It's because when you get in these zone match concepts, things become very muddy. And it's like, I think it's 3, but that guy matches here, and you wouldn't do that in straight 3. But if there's a cover 3 match, or it's like cover 2, but it's cover 2 carry. So you think of traditional cover 2, you have those 2 outside flat players. Well, in cover 2 carry, that outside flat player is carrying a deep route up the sideline. So like it kind of winds up looking a little bit like quarters. But on the other side, he didn't carry. Maybe it's cover 6, and like you wind up in this very in-between space. And it's hard. But there are things you can do to undress that, formations, personnel, and by the way, you can just not have the guy throw as much. And that's not how they've rolled this year. But yeah, it did look like Sam was
but
not having a good day.
From my
Obviously.
assessment of it, I've just accepted that this might be who Sam is. Because again, I think the last couple of weeks, he has regressed since, I guess those early Eagles games where like we thought Sam was our guy, or like some people seem to believe Sam was our guy, John Howell. But I only say that because he has, misreads, the last couple of the games. He has struggled to diagnose zones and things of that nature the last couple of games. So I think I've more so just come to grips that this might just be who Sam is. And maybe he is broken though. Maybe he is.
But like I don't know. I have a heart. I don't think he's a 100 yards a game guy.
Yeah.
But he could be inconsistent. That's part of it too. So, we got 3 more. 3 more to break it down. All right. There's an obvious one coming in Real Things. So let's get right to it. Let's end this show with real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Struggling with math over there, bro?
I am.
Okay, I'm gonna play this bite. You double check the math. Last night, Lisa Salters post game with Drew Lock. This interview was everywhere when I woke up this morning.
Again, Drew, we can see the emotion on your face. We can hear it in your voice. Can you just describe what you're feeling in your heart right now?
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to describe the feeling of, not playing for so long, or at least what feels like a really long time to me. And then you sit there, you watch games, you wonder, can I do this still? I haven't been out there on the field. That's the human nature of it. You get back out there last week, and I'm like, you know what? I'm the man still. I can go do this. And then you got another test this week where I didn't know if I was going to play or not. Sure enough, ended up playing. We're playing the Eagles tonight. And the boys around me rallied tonight. And it just, it feels so good. It feels so good. I'm so proud of everybody tonight.
That's good stuff. I mean, Drew Lock is kind of, I think people look at him and they're like, what a doofus. He's the guy that was, vibing to young Jeezy on the sideline. You like, that's fun, but like, are you an NFL quarterback? I remember going to the Senior Bowl 2019? Had to be 2019. And Lock was there. And I remember walking away pretty impressed with him. And so good for Drew Lock. Who knows what it means moving forward for him, but good for Drew Lock. Good for the Seahawks. Eagles. Talk about that another time. That's our show. See you tomorrow on the Team 980.